All right, now's a good time to start. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Document Distribution in 4.0. It's great to have you here with us this afternoon. My name is Jose Hernandez. I am the Director of Business Intelligence at Dun Solutions Group, and joining me today is Natasha Kishinevsky, who is one of the managers in our Business Intelligence practice. This is our 6th webinar in our SAP BusinessObjects 4.0 series. If you've missed any of the previous presentations, they are available on demand on our website at dunsolutions.com. Today's presentation is also going to be recorded and will be made available to you on that website so that you can share it with colleagues that may not have been able to attend. Typically, and those of you who have joined us in the past, we've had a moderator who helps us out with our presentation. Today, Natasha and I are flying without a moderator, and so where we traditionally address questions at the end, what we're going to do this time is allow you to go ahead and submit questions. You'll see that over in the right-hand side you have an area where you can do that, and we will compile those questions and answer them and distribute them at a later time after the presentation. And hopefully we'll be able to address all of those, and we'll share the responses and the questions with everyone that attended the presentation. All right, so let's take a look at what we're looking at today. In the past, we have done webinars based on some of the other BusinessObjects 4.0 capabilities, including mobility, the information design tool, web intelligence, dashboards, and Explorer. You can certainly reach those online and on our website. A little bit about Dun Solutions Group. There's always a commercial in advance of the presentations, and if you've been with us before, you have seen this commercial. So feel free to go refresh your coffee if you have seen these. If not, hang tight, and here we go. So Dun Solutions is a full-service consultancy. It was founded in 1988, and we have offices in the Chicago area, Minneapolis, Raleigh, and Bangalore, India. We have 3 major practice areas: the Application Development Group, the Business Intelligence Group, and our Packaged Solutions. Primarily, the presentation today revolves around some of the work that we do in the Business Intelligence Group, and we've talked about this in the past. Basically, we do end-to-end BI solutions, including data warehouses and all the way to dashboards and predictive analytics. Our Application Development Group works on custom application development, providing solutions in .NET and Java, as well as mobile devices. We also have a handful of packaged solutions which we have created throughout our history. Primarily solutions around the corporate legal area, and another product, Visible Visitors, which focuses on security. As part of our services, we are also professional training partners with a variety of the vendors that we work with, and provide open enrollment training as well as custom training and mentoring. Every company should have a NASCAR slide, and we have one too. We basically cover the biggest names in American business and many mid-market companies as well, and government agencies. You can see by our NASCAR slide, and some of you may be represented, that we basically handle technology implementations around business intelligence and custom application development. I want to highlight our relationship with SAP BusinessObjects. We have been a top-level partner since 1995, originally starting as an education partner, and now we also sell product and provide services around the stack. We have training facilities in North Carolina and in Minneapolis as well, and we offer certified private training as well. All right. Typically, this is where it's all handed off to me after we do the commercial, and I take over with the presentation, the topic for presentation for the day. What we're going to do, and I do realize that we do have a mixed audience with a variety skill sets, and so what I'd like to do is take a look at today's presentation at a 50,000-foot view, and we're going to keep it simple. What we want to do is introduce you to these capabilities from the user point of view, We have already contemplated our next webinar in the series where we're going to go more in depth with some of the more advanced capabilities. We'll talk more about that at the end. All right, so today's topic focuses on document distribution. That's the first thing that we're going to chat about, and we are going to have a couple of demonstrations throughout the presentation. We've decided to break up the demonstration into two components. Since we're going to be talking about document distribution, it really falls into two different ways of doing this, through scheduling and through publication. So there will be separate demonstrations for each one of those. We have some housekeeping to do at the end to talk about some other related items in terms of document distribution, and then we will, we'll virtually open the door for questions and answers. What I'll ask you to do is throughout the presentation or at the end, submit those questions through the viewer that you have so that we can consolidate those and provide responses. So document distribution. Any of you who have used the BusinessObjects platform know that it is a great tool to provide BI content in terms of web intelligence reports and crystal reports and a variety of other mechanisms. Today we're going to focus on the automation of those pieces of content and how we can share those and distribute those. Two major categories, as I mentioned earlier, scheduling and publishing. So scheduling really is the concept of taking an object and automatically having it run at specified times. You can do this on a once basis or a recurring basis, and you can, in essence, pick where this scheduled run is going to end up. Publishing is very similar, except publishing provides us the ability to mash up together a variety of documents and to have those distributed through target recipients, either through row-level security or through personalization. So we're going to take a look at these two techniques. And since publishing is built upon by some of the fundamental things that we talk about in scheduling, we will handle that one first. All right, so scheduling is done through the BI Launchpad. If you've attended some of our other webinars, you've seen the BI Launchpad in action when we went ahead and worked with Explorer and Web Intelligence. So the BI Launchpad is the place where we can go and create schedules for the various reporting content that we have, for example, Crystal and Web Intelligence documents. So two things are created when we do schedule an object. One of them is a scheduled instance, and the other one is an output instance. The scheduled instance is nothing more than an instance of the report with the scheduling information embedded. And what you'll often see when you create a schedule, you will see a scheduled instance which either indicates that it is reoccurring or pending, meaning that it's going to happen again or that it's waiting to happen. Now, when a scheduled object does get executed, it does create output instances, and the output instances are basically snapshots of the report that are stored historically in the repository. There are other places where the scheduled instances can end up, but we'll talk about that in a bit. The one thing to note is that scheduled instances are basically the cookies that you cut when you're using the report as a cookie cutter. Pardon me. So I thought the best way to talk about scheduling is to basically visit the schedule menu and the various parameters that we have to set up in order to create a scheduled instance. If you've done scheduling before in previous versions of BusinessObjects, many of these things are going to be very similar to you. There are a few capabilities that have been added, and you'll see those along the way. So we're going to focus on basically the recurrence settings, setting up prompts and formats, schedule server groups, and destinations. Let's first talk about recurrence. And recurrence talks about setting up the frequency at which reports will be run. In the example here on the screen, you see that I've selected the weekly recurrence. And what that does is allows me to set up a report that will run at least once a week, and I get to designate what days of the week that may occur. In addition, I do set up a scheduled start date and end date for this schedule to be active. What this allows me to do is indicate that I want this thing to run for a particular duration. It could be as short as a day, or it could be as long as 20 years or more. I don't recommend that you set up 20-year schedules, but you certainly can if you like. There is one component that I'm going to bring up that I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but one of the recurrences is based on calendars. And calendars are objects that we can define within the Central Management Console that allow us to designate what specific dates we want the report to run on. So the example that I have here is a payroll calendar. You can see the green dates are payroll dates, and you can associate a recurrence with this calendar, and the report will run on the dates that are indicated as green. So a very powerful tool that you can use when setting up recurrence. All right, sometimes, and actually typically, with Crystal reports, you might need to provide login credentials for the particular report, and this is the case with Crystal reports. It's not the case with Web Intelligence, but what you have to do is provide in your scheduling the database that you are talking to, as well as the credentials for the user that's going to be logging in. Some reports have prompts associated with them, and while you're scheduling the report, you can go ahead and define prompt entries for that schedule. Now, you got to be careful here, and you have a little bit of forethought. It is meaningless to schedule a report to run every week that has a hard-coded or a static set of prompts for the start date and end date, as an example. So one of the things that you want to make sure you do is make sure that your prompt information for your schedule isn't necessarily date-based. You can do this by creating optional prompts within your report. So you can take an existing report that has a begin and end date, make those optional. And what you can do is a creative little thing. You can define objects within your universe that are that will allow you to do date-relative reports. So instead of scheduling a report with specific hard-coded dates, you can go ahead and set up prompts that indicate something like the last 30 days, or from 5 days ago till today. And you can do this by creating special relative date objects in your universe and using those within your filters. In that case, your scheduling becomes much more versatile. All right, so beyond scheduling the recurrence and the prompts, the next thing is formats, and so this is how you want the report to end up being, or the cookie to end up being cut. And depending on whether you're doing Web Intelligence or Crystal reports, you have a variety of options for the output. In case of Crystal, you can see on the slide here, there's quite a slew of options for what Crystal ends up exporting. And with Web Intelligence, you have what we're used to, the Web Intelligence, the Excel, and the PDF, but we also have the ability to have Web Intelligence now instantiate CSV files. I want to bring up another warning here. I've got it at the bottom in red. It's nothing scary is going to happen. It's just a warning. If you are scheduling instances to run and you're going to deliver these instances to individuals, be careful that if you choose Web Intelligence as your output format, it is possible for these users to potentially refresh the report and maybe even modify, assuming they have rights to do so, the query, and override any kind of limitations that you might have put on the data by scheduling of prompts. So remember that when you do output format as Web Intelligence, it is a living, breathing document that can be refreshed. So be careful of that. Certainly, if you have row-level security set up within your universe, this is something that you won't have to worry about because they will still have to authenticate and the row-level security will apply. But just be aware that the Web Intelligence output format is a live thing. Okay, and then we have scheduling server groups. And scheduling server groups assumes that you have defined server groups within the Central Management Console. What this basically does is allow you to group together multiple services that are running on your servers. So, for example, the services that provide, that generate the Web Intelligence reports. And you may, typically, in a large deployment, you have more than one. What you can do is you can group some of these together and have it such that you can designate which server group will process these scheduled reports. So one idea is you can define a group of services that specifically handle these batch scheduled processes, and you can denote that these particular jobs will run against that as opposed to the services that are handling the ad hoc live requests. In terms of destinations, there's a variety of destinations that we can set up when we are scheduling. We can set up to use the default server settings as a destination, which typically is the repository and the folder which the document lives in. But we can also set up the destinations to be a BI inbox, an email account, an FTP server, or a file system. We're going to take a peek at these settings, and we'll start with the BI inbox. So when you pick a destination to be the BI inbox, you can go ahead and identify who is going to get this report based on user groups or users that are listed. And you select the users that it's going to and move them on over to the selected recipients box. Now, this is going to end up as an instance in their inbox. What you should be aware is that you have the ability to do a little bit of housekeeping. There's a checkbox here, excuse me, there's a selection, keep an instance in the history, which is by default turned on. What this does is not only deliver the instance to the person's inbox, but also keeps an instance in history. You may not want to do that. And instead of having multiple instances of the report living out there, or the historical instances, you can go ahead and turn that off, and the only instance that will live is the one that is sent to the folks to their inboxes, depending on who you selected. So that's an important note. Basically, you can clean up after yourself that way. In terms of email, you can also pick email as a destination, and this is a very neat thing. You can go ahead and deliver content. Remember, under formats, one of the options we had is Acrobat or PDF. So what we can do is we can schedule our report to run as a PDF and then have it sent via email to people that don't even have login into the environment. And this is a good way of distributing content. Now, what's really neat here is that we have tags that we can use in the from, to, CC, and subject lines. And what this allows us to do is make our designation of these components variable. And so depending on what the report name is or the date and time, you can add these tags to your messages or to your from, to, CC, and subject lines, and it makes it more relevant and neat things to have there. Before your email can work, you do have to go to the adaptive job server and set up your email server. Here you can see that I did hide my IP address so that people don't start sending things to my email server. So make sure that you set this up to be yours. Don't use our domain name. Though I'd love to help you with sending out your emails, I prefer that you use your own. And what you do here is, in the adaptive job server, you set up these parameters, and then it will enable your BusinessObjects deployment to talk to your email server and allow you to deliver the emails in this way. By the way, this is done in the Central Management Console, and so you need to have administrative rights to go in there and do that. Other options for destination are the FTP server and file system. This can be very handy. Large outputs, maybe you're dumping data as a CSV and you can end up with very large files. You might want to deliver that by placing it into an FTP server for folks to pick up. You can also go ahead and set up as a destination folder structures within your file system so that people with access to this folder structure, or even applications with access to this folder structure, can pick up whatever content you've dropped in there. So imagine that you scheduled a report as PDF, drop the PDFs on a regular basis into a particular folder, and your portal environments or any other application that you have can go in there and find PDF documents that were generated from your BusinessObjects system and display them that way. Like the SMTP server or the mail server, we also have to set up in our adaptive job server our file system. And one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we provide the credentials of a user account that's allowed to write to that particular directory. So this service has to log in and talk to the file system just like any other service would. There's a couple of neat other things that we can do here. We're going to switch over to the Central Management Console. In the CMC, there is an option under scheduling where you can schedule for. This will allow you to schedule reports for users who maybe don't have the ability to schedule reports or that you need to do some customized scheduling for. And you can go ahead and create scheduled instances for targeted users. So instead of scheduling for your own purposes, you can come in and schedule for someone else, and you can do that from the CMC. Another neat thing that you can do with scheduling from the Central Management Console is notifications. Now, this does not work with Web Intelligence, but other scheduling objects it does work with. And this allows you the ability to go ahead and notify, typically via email, whether a job has successfully run or if a job had failed to run. And it's a neat way of making sure, sending ticklers out about jobs that may or may not have completed. All right, I get to take a break now, and I'm going to hand this off to Natasha, who's going to walk through a scheduling. Basically, the slides that I showed you, she's going to do it in real life. So let me prepare the stage for her. And Natasha, I hand it off to you.
Thanks, Jose. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is basically all the information that Jose just laid out for you. We're going to go through it in real life and see what it looks like on the platform, which most of you are probably familiar with the look and feel of it by now, if you've seen any of our previous webinars. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my VI Launchpad here. And the first thing that I want to show you is how to go by scheduling a report. So I'm going to navigate to find one of my sample reports here. And for this, for the purposes of this demo, we're going to be using Web Intelligence documents. So here I am at the level where all my documents, my sample documents, are displayed. So what I'm going to do is pick a document, this regional sales revenue report, and what I want to do is schedule it. So again, you can see all these options that Jose just talked about in his slides. The first thing that I want to change for this is the recurrence. So here's a number of different recurrence types that we can set up for our document. What I'm going to do right now is simply run this document once. Sorry, I'm going to run it now, just so we can see it in the demo. Why would you ever want to run a document now? Basically, if you run a document with this option, it'll create an instance in history for you. So if you ever need to go back in time and see what the data looks like on this particular day, it basically takes a snapshot, excuse me, so that you can use it later on. So I'm going to leave that as now. I'm going to move on to my format. One thing that I want to point out here that we now have 4 different format options. Comma separated values is new in 4.0, along with PDF, Excel, and Web Intelligence that were there before. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule this document to be executed as a PDF document. And the next thing that I want to configure is my destination. So for the purpose of this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this to my email. Actually, I'm going to send it to Jose's email because I'm working with his machine here. So you can configure an email address that you're sending it from, an email address to, in the subject line, you can use, just like with the email addresses, you can use different placeholders, like a title. You can put any kind of information in the message here. And I'm going to send this document as attachment. So let's go ahead and schedule this. So as you can see here on the screen, there is a document that's pending along with all of my successful executions. There is one document that's running now. If I refresh this, it should say success. All right, and I just got that report in the email. So this is a good option for to send it to those people who don't really have access to the platform. And if I were to open the document right now, all I need is an Adobe Reader, and I can see this information here. All right. Now that this document has been scheduled multiple times, you could also see the number of instances that it created on the platform. So this particular report has been scheduled 5 times. If I wanted to look at the history, I could view the history on the platform as well for this document. And you could see the successes. You could also see the failures. And if you click on a success or a failure, it'll actually give you a little description of what happened. If there was a failure on the system, you would see the actual error messages and warnings listed here in this file. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to our Central Management Console and go through the scheduling process here. I'm going to point out some of the differences that don't exist in BI Launchpad. So what I'm going to do is, now that I'm logged into the Central Management Console, I'm going to go into Folders, navigate to my documents, and open up my scheduler. So again, we can see that there is a recurrence, and just for fun, I'm going to show you what the calendar looks like. So this is what Jose mentioned. We have this payroll calendar with run days highlighted, so you can see when this, if I were to use the calendar option, these are the dates when this document will be scheduled to run. All right. So again, I'm going to run it now. Here you could also, if you're doing the scheduling through CMC, you could also set up limits. You could set up the number of retries allowed and so on. So let me go to, I'm going to mention notifications here again, but keep in mind that notifications are not available for web intelligence reports. With Crystal reports, you can definitely use that. All right. So I'm going to use it, I'm going to schedule it as a PDF document as well. The one thing that I skipped is the thing that's not available in the BI Launchpad, but is available for us in CMC, the Schedule For option. So this is something that you would use to schedule a report on behalf of somebody, for somebody who may not have access to the platform for whatever reason. So I can actually schedule this report to run for, I find myself here in the system. Okay. And what should I do for destinations? I'll just send it to my BI inbox. All right. Now, as you can see also from CMC Scheduler, you have other options here. You can look in the history, and you can look at limits. With the limits, you can actually set up the limit of number of instances that can be generated for this particular document. After the number is reached, it's going to start deleting instances from the platform, which is a really nice practice to have. This ensures that you don't have any old instances cluttering your platform. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and schedule this report now. So that I All right, so let's take a look at this document running right now. And as you can see now, the created by, even though I'm logged into CMC as administrator, it now says Natalie K because I scheduled this report for that person. And now it's successfully executed. here we go. If I navigate to my BO inbox, I now see this new report that was delivered to me that I just scheduled through CMC. All right, so there's two options, two approaches for scheduling. You can either use BI Launchpad or use CMC, where you have a lot more functionality, but the end result is basically the same. So I'm going to pass the controls back to Jose. We're going to talk about publications next.
So those of you that have been using the 3X environment, you probably saw that things look very similar to what you are used to, and that is the case. There's a lot of similarities between these, but there's also some of the new features, as we pointed out, for things that you can do. We're going to switch gears now and talk about publications. So we talked about scheduling, which basically says you can go take an object inside the repository, whether it be a Crystal report or a web intelligence document or a program, and schedule it to run at a particular frequency for a particular and basically a publication is a collection of documents intended for distribution. In essence, what we're talking about here. And so what you do with publications is you identify your document sources, you identify your recipients, and you set up your personalization so that these bundles of documents can be delivered in a variety of ways to the folks that are supposed to receive them. Now, when we talk about publications, what we want to do is basically distribute information throughout the organization. We want to target individuals or groups and make sure that the content is personalized. Doesn't mean that every publication has to have personalized content, but it does mean that if there are reports that have sections that are relevant to one individual and not another, that we can certainly address that. And we can even mix and match that with content that isn't personalized. So when we do this, we are basically able to distribute information in a secure fashion across the internet, extranet, or intranet. Through publications, we can also minimize our database hits. Now, this is a big deal because if you have a community of, let's say, 1,000 people and you want to distribute personalized content, you don't necessarily want to hit your database or run the report 1,000 individual times. We'll see with publications that one of the things we can do is minimize those database hits. So this is primarily used with Web Intelligence and Crystal reports, and that's how we are going to peek at this. So the first concept that we want to talk about is report bursting. From a Web Intelligence point of view, there's two approaches, but from a Crystal point of view, there's three approaches to bursting. So the first one we'll talk about is one database fetch for all recipients. That means let me go in, run the report one time, get all the data that I need, and then divvy it up from there based on some criteria. And this is the best approach for your database because you are minimizing the number of times that you're hitting the database server in order to execute this particular report. Another approach is one database fetch for each batch of recipients. So as opposed to one collective run, recipients can be grouped, and then you, depending on how many groups you have, you run as many fetches as there are groups. This is the default approach for Crystal. And it's something that is not available in Web Intelligence, but it does allow you to minimize those database fetches and also personalize based on the groups that you've defined. And finally, probably the least efficient in terms of database access, you have a database fetch for each recipient. Lots of database hits, but it certainly is the one that is the most secure because you are guaranteeing that even if you forget to set up low-level security or set up the partitioning of the data in the report in such a way that folks don't see things that they shouldn't, it's going to ensure that, that you've got a very customized hit against each of the reports. All right, so talk about how we set up publications, and in much the same way as we do with scheduling, we create a new publication and we have to set up some parameters around the description or the definition of this publication. So we give it a meaningful name and a description, and so then we have a publication instance. It looks a lot like any other object sitting inside of the repository, but with the specific purpose of grouping up content to be distributed. All right, there's a very neat and handy, I was going to call it a dialog box, but it isn't. It's basically a page within the environment. The summary of the publication, and this in one sheet lays out what's going on within this publication. Not just the name of the publication, but what are the documents associated with it, who are the recipients that are getting this, do we have enterprise recipients that were included or not including, and are we using dynamic recipients? So a good chunk of information that pretty much tells you everything you want to know about this particular publication. The first step in setting up a publication is to identify what content or what documents you want to bundle up in this publication. You can mix and match to some extent. However, there's an exception. If you include a Crystal report in your publication, you cannot include Web Intelligence reports. If you include a Web Intelligence, you cannot include Crystal. However, with either of these two, you can bundle up PDFs and Word docs and Excel docs, anything that might be living in your repository. So that's the only restriction there. You also have the ability to tell this thing at the time of running the publication, do we want these reports to refresh at runtime? You may or may not want to do this depending on the situation. There may be a monthly report that you're distributing with a bundle and you're distributing it weekly. There's no reason to necessarily refresh that report at every runtime. So the way that I can designate who gets these publications, there's two ways. It's through enterprise recipients and dynamic recipients. Let's talk about enterprise recipients first. And enterprise recipients are nothing more than selecting groups or individual users within the enterprise that you want to receive this publication. And so you can choose folks to include and you can choose folks to exclude. Okay, the more exciting and the one that we have the most fun with is dynamic recipients. And dynamic recipients basically means I'm going to use a result set generated by a query in one report to determine who I'm going to send this publication to. So the first thing that we do with dynamic recipients is we identify a report that's going to contain the folks that I want to send this publication to. And so I select that particular report. And typically what you do is you create a specific report that through a query will identify the folks that need to get this. For example, you want to send this publication to folks who have exceeded their revenue targets, or maybe to folks that are not meeting their revenue targets. And so this way, a publication can send out a bundle of information targeted to those specific audiences. Once you've identified the report and the query within that report that's going to provide you the list, what you need to do is provide three fields here. One is what field is the recipient identifier, what is the full name, and what is the email address that you want to send this thing out to, assuming we want to use an email to distribute this in this way. And so once you've identified that, you get an indication of who's been targeted based on the dynamic recipient source report, and you can decide to select those individuals or use the entire list. You can see in the bottom half of the screen there that I can check the checkbox that says use the entire list, or I can go and select individuals from the list below. All right, so now comes the personalization part. So I've got this bundle of documents that I've grouped together. You can see those up on top where it says title, and I've got three particular documents. The one in the middle, the eFashion Sales Revenue Report, is going to be personalized. In essence, that's the one I'm going to burst. So every recipient will receive the information found in the first and the third report, and they will receive targeted information for that middle report. So what I need to do, and I go to the bottom half of this page, I can see that each of the reports is listed, and what I want to do is tie a specific field, typically a section field, within the report itself to the dynamic recipient mapping field over all the way on the right-hand side there. So I decided to use the regional manager as the identifier for who gets to see the section, and I've indicated that that regional manager from the particular query within the report is what I'm going to match up together. It's almost like a mail merge. All right, so format for these publications. It was, in scheduling, it was very straightforward. You basically identified you had identified your document, and now you're going to go ahead and pick a particular output format. That was it. With publications, since you have the ability to have multiple documents, you can designate for each one of the reports what that output will be. In fact, you can choose multiple output formats for a particular report. And once you've done that, you then go ahead and say, well, for the particular report, do I want all the report tabs or just one of the specific report tabs to end up in this publication? So there's a variety of options that you have here. I do want to point out that there's the little MHTML option. That's basically mail HTML, which you can use the selection if you want the content of the report to be in the body of the email as opposed to being an attachment. Much like we did with scheduling, what we then in essence do is identify the to field as the system email address. That's the same email address that we designated as we were setting up. In fact, let me back up real quick here. That email address here is what's being referred to over here by this tag. And so as the publication is being executed, as it goes from recipient to recipient, it will send an email to that email address. And I can use my tags much like I did when I was setting up the schedule. All right, the highlighted, well, actually the encircled parameters here or for publications is pretty much the same as for scheduling, so we don't need to discuss those again. But I do want to point out something very important, and that's testing your publication. So there is the ability to go into test mode for your publication so that you can see if it's going to do what you expect it to do. And test mode is very important because what you can do in test mode is you can pick yourself as the email recipient of all the bursted content so that all your recipient list does not become the guinea pig of you testing your publication. So what happens here, every piece of content that would have been delivered to an email recipient will be delivered to you, and you can kind of see what's included within. So if you expected 25 people to get this email, you should get 25 emails yourself with the targeted information inside of each one of those emails. That's the idea here. Test it out, make sure it works before you put it into production. Another thing that you can do with a publication as a user, if there's an existing publication out there that you aren't necessarily receiving, you can certainly add yourself to the list of folks getting that publication, and you can subscribe to it, and you can also unsubscribe from it. All right, and now we're going to take a peek or a demo of setting up publications. Let me prep the environment here and hand it off to Natasha again.
All right, so to finish off, we're going to talk about setting up a publication. I'm actually going to show you a publication that was created in preparation for this webinar, and we'll go through the different options and settings for that publication. All right, so now that I'm logged into my BI Launchpad, I'm going to go ahead and again navigate to my publication here. So here's a publication that was created, and I'm going to open up the properties and show you the different setup options here. So again, we start out by looking at the summary. Some of the general properties here, where we can change name of the publication. We can look at the source documents here. And one of the options that Jose mentioned, we can choose to refresh both reports at one time or just one of them. We can, from this screen, we can actually add new documents to this publication. And I saw one of the questions was, can we mix content? And the answer is yes and no. We can't mix VO content. We can't have a Webby document along with a Crystal report. However, we can add different other types of documents like PDF files and so on, and Excel files and so on. So I can go ahead and add a PDF document here as well. I'm going to skip enterprise recipients because this particular publication has dynamic recipients included. For dynamic recipients, we can use either a Crystal report or a Webby report, so either one would work. In this particular scenario, we're using a Webby document that has our dynamic recipients. Basically, all you need in a dynamic recipients report is the name of a person and their email address, or any kind of other delivery mechanism that you need for that. So here's, again, what we have for, let's pretend we're regional managers here, and we have each one of us has an email address. And I can distribute it to entire list or pick individual recipients. I'm going to just go ahead and distribute to the entire list. So in my documents that I'm going to distribute, in both my documents actually, I have it sectioned based on regional managers. So each one of my dynamic recipients, each one of my regional managers will only receive the subset, that section of the report that has their name on it. So I'm basically setting up my relationship here between the source report and the dynamic recipient mapping. All right, the format, I'm going to keep it as PDF, and this is going to be sent to their emails. I'm actually going to change this really quick. And there are no prompts in these documents, but if there were, this is where I would modify them. Now, some prompts actually can be created as dynamic prompts or as optional prompts, so no changes will be needed here. If they'll simply be ignored if they are set up as optional. All right, so let me do one thing here before I'll remove this document for now. I'm going to say that I'm done modifying this publication. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to test this publication. So I'm going to enable my test mode. And instead of sending it to the whole list of my recipients, I'm going to send it to Jose.
I can't wait to receive all these publications.
All right, just so you know, we have 3 regional managers identified. So what I'm expecting to see is 3 different emails. Let's go ahead and test this. All right, so this takes us back to that screen that we saw when we were scheduling, and you can see I've had some failures here. Hopefully this time it will be successful. And I should start getting emails pretty soon. All right, while it's doing that, I'm going to prepare the screen for the next topic. Oh, here we go. Here's email number 1. We'll look at this document here. This is for Regional Manager Natasha. Here's my document number 3 for Maria. And there should be one more coming. There it is. For Jose. There we go. All right, so now if I go back to this screen, it says success, meaning that my test just concluded and I got all 3 emails for all 3 of my regional managers. All right, so this is all that I wanted to talk to you about for publications, but there's one more thing that we wanted to show you before we finish the webinar. I'm actually already logged into my CMC. So the last thing I wanted to show you is the instance manager. Instance manager basically captures all the different instances that exist on the platform, all the recurring instances that are scheduled to run. In the instance manager, you can perform various operations such as pausing an instance, resuming an instance, rescheduling it, or running it, executing it on the spot. You have all kinds of different metrics here the completion time, the next run time, the submission time, and so on. You can even have duration listed here. So when you log into your instance manager, you have a better understanding of what kinds of things are happening on the platform. If you see that there's duplicates of something, you can actually cancel it, and so on, to avoid cluttering the content here. So I think that's all that we had.
All right, let's bring this home because I think we're running out of time here. I did see a whole bunch of questions that were showing up. What we're going to do is we're going to consolidate the questions and respond to those and pass the answers out to folks that were attending the webinar. So I can't wait to read my regional reports, so I'm very excited about that. All right, so Natasha showed you the Instance Manager and the Central Management Console. In case we didn't get to that, we did have a slide here for it. I did want to show you the interface for defining your own calendars. And you basically create a calendar, give it a name, and you select the fields which you want reports to run on when that particular calendar is associated with a schedule. So very neat, very handy. We're looking here at the payroll calendar. All right, so to wrap this up, what's next? Basically, you either have or are planning to deploy your BusinessObjects 4.0 platform. That's great. Go ahead and do it. You don't have to wait for the 4.0 platform, though, to do some of the things that we showed you today. That is already available with the prior releases. But go ahead and plan your BI initiative or your 4.0 migration, or maybe your BI solution that you want to put in place. So what you want to do is design it, build it, deploy it, and we are certainly here to help you do that. That's what we do for a living. That's what we live for. And make sure that in your next deployment or your next initiative that you figure out a way that you want to take advantage of document distribution capabilities within the environment. Now, there's a few things that we did not touch upon that are related to scheduling, but as you can see, we were already tight on time for what we were doing here. So our next webinar, we're going to focus on events, alerts, and system monitoring. And specifically events, we'll take a look at how that ties into scheduling as well. So that'll probably happen within a month or two. We'll set that up on the schedule and notify folks when that is happening. I do want to thank you all for joining us today. As always, it's our pleasure to present this material to you and get people interested in some of the capabilities on the BusinessObjects platform. So with that, I bid you all goodbye and thank you, and see you next time.